The bright light in the sky grew larger each day. News channels showed the same images over and over. A strange ship, unlike anything humans had built, was coming closer to Earth. People were scared, excited, and confused all at once. Lieutenant Jack Miller stood on the bridge of the U.S. horizon, his heart beating fast as he watched the alien ship through the view screen. It was huge and shiny, like a giant crystal floating in space. The ship had appeared 3 days ago, and now it was settling into Earth's orbit. "Lieutenant, prepare the welcome message," said Captain Susan Powell. Her voice was calm, but Jack could see the tension in her shoulders. "Yes, Captain," he replied, moving to the communication station. The world's leaders had prepared a message of peace and friendship. Jack's job was to send it to the alien ship. As he worked, his hands shook slightly. This was a moment that would change human history forever. The alien ship responded almost immediately. Strange symbols flashed across the screen, then changed to English words. "They understood our language," whispered Jack in amazement. "We are the Norvelians." The message read, "We will meet with your leaders." Within hours, a smaller ship detached from the large one and headed toward the United Nations building in New York. Captain Powell and Jack were ordered to attend as military representatives. The meeting room was packed with world leaders and important officials. Jack stood against the wall, watching as the doors opened. 3 tall figures walked in. They had skin that looked like clear crystal with swirling colors underneath. They walked with perfect grace, their movements smooth and precise. The tallest one stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Zixtal of the Norvelian Alliance. We have been observing your planet for some time." The UN Secretary-General welcomed them and began explaining human society and achievements. As he spoke about Earth's technological progress, Jack noticed something strange. The aliens were making small movements with their crystal-like fingers. It almost looked like they were laughing. Ambassador Zixtal interrupted the Secretary-General. "Your technology is quaint. We mastered these simple tools thousands of years ago." A chill ran through the room. Jack glanced at Captain Powell, whose face remained professional despite the insult. When it was time to discuss military matters, Jack helped set up a presentation of Earth's defense capabilities. As images of nuclear missiles and aircraft carriers appeared on the screen, the alien ambassador made a sound like tinkling glass. "You defend yourselves with these?" Zixtal asked, not hiding his amusement. "They would not stop even our smallest scout ships." Captain Powell stepped forward. "Perhaps you would share information about your own defenses as a gesture of good faith between our peoples." The ambassador's colors swirled faster. "Your species is not ready for such knowledge. It would be like giving a baby a laser weapon." Jack felt his face grow hot with anger and embarrassment. The aliens weren't even trying to hide their feelings of superiority. Meanwhile, across the city at NASA headquarters, Dr. Alan Wright was studying the first biological scans of the Norvelians. Something interesting caught his attention. "That's strange," he said to himself, leaning closer to his screen. The aliens' crystalline bodies seemed to be reacting to Earth's atmosphere. Tiny changes were happening at a molecular level. Their bodies were absorbing nitrogen and oxygen in an unusual way. Dr. Wright made notes quickly. No one had mentioned this yet. While the world was focused on the aliens' advanced technology and rude behavior, something was happening to their bodies that even they might not know about. Back at the UN, the meeting was ending. The Norvelians agreed to establish an embassy on Earth, but made it clear they saw humans as barely worth their attention. As they left, Ambassador Zixtal turned to Captain Powell. "Your species has potential, in the way that all primitive life forms do. Perhaps in a few thousand years, you might become interesting to us." Captain Powell kept her dignity. "We look forward to proving you wrong much sooner than that, Ambassador." Jack admired her courage. As he watched the aliens leave, he couldn't help but wonder what these arrogant beings really wanted from Earth. No one travels across space just to mock another species. The Norvelians had a reason for being here, and Jack was determined to find out what it was. 3 months after the Norvellians arrived, they had set up their embassy in Washington, D.C. The building was unlike any other on Earth. It seemed to grow from the ground, made of the same crystal-like material as their ships. At night, it glowed with soft blue light. Lisa Carpenter walked through the security gate every morning with a fake smile. As the main human translator at the embassy, she heard more alien insults than anyone else. Today, she was joining a meeting between Ambassador Zixtal and representatives from several countries. "The technology we offer is simple enough for humans to understand," Zixtal was saying as Lisa entered. He gestured to a small device on the table. "This will clean your water without chemicals." One of the human scientists picked it up carefully. "This is very generous, but we were hoping for something more significant, perhaps medical technology." The colors inside Zixtal's crystal body swirled faster. Lisa had learned this meant he was amused or annoyed. "Your bodies are too different from ours. Our medical tools would harm you. This is appropriate for your level of development." Lisa translated his words but left out the condescending tone. She had become good at making the aliens sound more polite than they were. After the meeting, Lisa stayed to organize some files. She heard Zixtal speaking with another Norvellian in their clicking language. They didn't know she had started to understand some of their words without the translation device. "These humans waste our time," clicked Zixtal. "But we must keep them happy until we decide if they are useful." "Their military skills are primitive, but interesting," replied the other Norvellian. "They fight in strange ways." Lisa pretended not to hear. This wasn't the first time she had caught the aliens talking about humans as if they were tools to be used. She needed to tell someone, but who would believe her? Across town, Major Frank Collins sat in a small room filled with screens. His job was to watch the Norvellians and learn about them. His team had noticed something odd. "Sir, they've requested access to military history again," said his assistant, pointing to a screen. "This is the third time this week." Frank leaned forward. The image showed a Norvellian at the National Archives, studying books about famous human battles. "What's this one looking at?" Frank asked. "The Battle of Thermopylae, sir, where 300 Spartans held off a much larger Persian army." Frank rubbed his chin. First it was Vietnam, then guerrilla warfare in general. Now ancient battles where the smaller force won. He stood up. "They're too interested in how we fight when we're outnumbered." "Maybe they're just studying our history, sir." Frank shook his head. "No, they mock our technology, our science, our culture. The only thing they seem to respect, even a little, is our ability to fight against bad odds." He tapped the screen. "That worries me." Meanwhile, at NASA, Dr. Alan Wright was making progress. He had compared scans of newly arrived Norvellians with those who had been on Earth for months. "The changes are small but real," he told his colleague. "Their crystalline structure is absorbing something from our atmosphere. It's making them stronger, more energetic." "Have they noticed?" Ellen shook his head. "I don't think so. It's happening too slowly. But in a year or two, they'll feel the difference." "Should we tell them?" Ellen thought for a moment. "Not yet. This might be important information. The government should decide what to do with it." Back at the embassy, Lisa was leaving for the day when she overheard another conversation. This time, the Norvellians sounded worried. "Any sign of them following us here?" one asked. "No," replied another. "But they will find us eventually. They always do." "Will the humans be of any use when they come?" "Perhaps. They are good at dying bravely, if nothing else." Lisa walked faster, her heart beating hard. The Norvellians were running from something that scared even them. And whatever it was coming to Earth. That night, Lisa, Frank, and Alan were all called to a secret meeting. Captain Powell was there too, along with Jack Miller. None of them knew why they had been gathered, but they all had pieces of a puzzle that was about to become clearer and much more frightening. The meeting room was deep underground, beneath the Pentagon. The 5 humans sat around a table, looking at each other with confusion. "Thank you all for coming," said General Henry Blackwood. He was tall with gray hair and a serious face. "What I'm about to share is top secret." He pressed a button, and a screen on the wall lit up. It showed a star map. 2 days ago, we intercepted a message from the Norvelian embassy to their home world. Our computers have been working to translate it. He looked at each person. "What we found changes everything." Lisa Carpenter leaned forward. "They're running from something, aren't they?" The general looked surprised. "How did you know?" "I overheard things at the embassy. They mentioned being followed." General Blackwood nodded. "The message confirms it. The Norvelians are refugees." He pointed to the star map. This was their home system. These 3 other stars were their colonies. Jack Miller studied the map. "What happened to them?" "They were attacked by something the Norvelians call the Voidborn." The general's voice grew quiet. "From what we can understand, the Voidborn are like living shadows. They consume everything in their path." Dr. Alan Wright shook his head. "That's not scientifically possible." 6 months ago, we would have said crystal aliens weren't possible either, said Captain Powell. Yet here we are. Major Frank Collins stood up and walked to the map. "This explains their interest in our military history. They're studying how we fight against superior forces." He turned to face the others. "Because they're losing their war." The room was quiet as everyone considered this. "There's more," said the general. The message mentioned Earth specifically. It said, "The humans may provide useful soldiers in the coming conflict." Jack slammed his hand on the table. "They came here to use us as cannon fodder." "We need to confront them," said Captain Powell. "Make them tell us the truth." The next day, Ambassador Zixtal was called to an emergency meeting with Earth's leaders. The room was tense as General Blackwood played back the translated message. The ambassador's crystal body darkened. "You were not meant to hear this." "Clearly," said Captain Powell coldly. "Is it true? Are you running from these Voidborn?" Zixtal was silent for a long moment. Then, for the first time, the alien seemed to lose his arrogance. "Yes," he admitted. "The Voidborn destroyed our home world 3 Earth years ago. We are the survivors." "And you came to Earth to find soldiers?" asked the general. "We came to Earth because it was hidden, far from the normal space lanes." Zixtal's voice grew softer. "But yes, we also hope to find allies. The Voidborn are unlike anything you can imagine. They exist partly in another dimension. Our weapons barely affect them." "So you mock us while secretly planning to use us as shields," said Jack, unable to hide his anger. "We studied you," corrected Zixtal. "Your technology is indeed primitive, but your species has a remarkable ability to fight against overwhelming odds." His colors swirled faster. "You are creative in ways we are not. The Norvelian mind values order and logic. We fight with careful plans and precise formations. When those failed against the Voidborn, we had no alternative strategies." "But humans are different," said Lisa, understanding. "We improvise." "Yes," said Zixtal. "In our observation of your history, humans often prevail through what we would consider chaotic, illogical tactics. This adaptability might be valuable against the Voidborn." General Blackwood stood up. "You should have been honest from the beginning. We don't know if we can trust you now." Before Zixtal could answer, an aide rushed into the room. His face was pale. "Sir," he said to the general, "our deep space monitors just picked up something entering the solar system. It's like nothing we've ever seen. It's absorbing the light around it." Zixtal's crystal body turned almost black with fear. "They found us," he whispered. "The Voidborn are here." Everyone rushed to the main control room, where a large screen showed a dark shape moving through space. It wasn't a ship like the Norvelians. It looked like a piece of empty space, darker than the darkness around it. "How far away is it?" asked General Blackwood. "It just passed Mars, sir," answered a technician. "Moving fast." Zixtel moved closer to the screen. That is only a scout. Small, but dangerous. What do we do? Captain Powell asked. Your weapons will not harm it, said Zixtel. We must get our ships ready. General Blackwood shook his head. This is our planet. We defend it. He turned to his staff. Prepare all space-based defenses and get the U.S. horizon ready for combat. 3 hours later, Jack Miller stood on the bridge of the U.S. horizon. The ship was humanity's newest space vessel, built for exploration but equipped with weapons. They had been ordered to intercept the strange object near Mars. Target in visual range, said the ship's pilot. Jack looked at the screen. The dark shape was clearer now. It seemed to bend and twist, like a living shadow. It was about the size of a small car, but somehow it felt more threatening than the giant Norvelian ships. Weapons ready, Captain, Jack reported to Captain Powell. Fire when ready, Lieutenant. The horizon fired its missiles. They flew straight toward the dark shape, but instead of exploding, they simply disappeared into the blackness. No effect, Jack said, checking his screens. It's still coming. The shadow moved faster now, heading straight for the horizon. When it hit the ship, it didn't crash like a normal object. Instead, it seemed to seep through the hull like water through cloth. Alarms sounded throughout the ship. Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, shouted the security officer. But there's no air loss. It's just coming through the solid metal. All hands, battle stations, ordered Captain Powell. Security teams to the breach points. Jack grabbed a weapon and joined a team heading to Deck 3. When they arrived, they saw something impossible. A piece of darkness was moving through the corridor. 2 crew members were already on the floor, not moving. Their skin was gray, as if all life had been pulled out of them. Fire, shouted the security leader. Their weapons had no effect. The shadow moved toward them. Jack backed away, feeling a cold unlike anything he had ever felt before. This wasn't just a cold temperature. It felt like the opposite of life itself. As the shadow came closer, Jack made a desperate decision. He ran to a control panel on the wall and smashed it open. Inside were the controls for the plasma conduits that fed power to the engines. Everyone back. He shouted as he pulled down all the levers. Hot, bright plasma burst from the ceiling pipes. The corridor filled with glowing blue energy. The shadow seemed to shrink away from the light. When the plasma touched it, the darkness hissed and bubbled like water on a hot pan. Jack adjusted the controls, making the plasma spray in a pattern that pushed the shadow creature back. He noticed that the plasma glowed with a particular color that seemed to hurt the creature most. It doesn't like this specific light, Jack said to himself. The shadow retreated, moving back through the walls and out of the ship. On the bridge, they watched it flee into space, away from Earth. We drove it off, said Captain Powell with relief. For now, Jack replied. But I think I found something. It reacted to the plasma, especially the light it gave off. When they returned to Earth, Jack explained what happened to Dr. Wright and the Norvelian scientists. Dr. Wright studied the plasma's light spectrum. This is interesting, he said, pointing to his screen. The wavelength that hurt it most is very common in our sun, but rare in other stars. For the first time, a Norvelian scientist looked at a human with something besides mockery. Our sun doesn't produce this wavelength at all, said the alien. This could be why the Voidborn have defeated us so easily. Jack looked at the Norvelian. Then maybe it's time we work together. Our sun, your technology. The Norvelian nodded slowly. Perhaps you have something to teach us after all. The next 2 weeks were busy on Earth. Humans and Norvelians worked together for the first time. Commander Olivia Martinez led this new team. She was smart and tough, with years of engineering experience. Her job was to create weapons that could hurt the Voidborn. The light from our sun damages them, she explained to her mixed team of human and alien engineers. We need to make weapons that use this light. The Norvelians shared their advanced technology, while the humans provided ideas about how to use it. At first, the aliens still acted superior, but that changed after the first successful test. A young human engineer named Steve had suggested putting the light-generating technology into handheld guns. The Norvelians had said it wouldn't work, but Steve built one anyway, and it worked perfectly. "I don't understand," said a Norvelian engineer named Kelvin. "Our calculations said this design would fail." "Sometimes you have to try things even when the numbers say they won't work," Steve replied with a smile. Meanwhile, Jack Miller was working with Norvelian soldiers to train the first mixed fighting units. They practiced in a large warehouse, learning how to fight together against the Voidborn. "Your formations are too rigid," Jack told Kelvin, who had joined the combat training. "The Voidborn can move through solid objects. If you stand in perfect lines, they'll just go through you and attack from behind." "But organized formations are the foundation of proper military strategy," argued Kelvin. "Not against an enemy like this," Jack said. "We need to be unpredictable, chaotic. That's how humans have always fought against stronger enemies." Kelvin didn't look convinced, but he tried the disorganized fighting style Jack suggested. By the end of the day, the Norvelian admitted it might work better against the shadow creatures. At NASA, Dr. Wright made another important discovery. He had been studying how human DNA reacted to the Voidborn. During the attack on the horizon, the ship's computers had recorded everything. "Look at this," he showed his team. "When the Voidborn touched the crew members, it drained their life energy. But some people took longer to be affected than others." Lisa Carpenter had joined Dr. Wright's team as a translator. She looked at the data. "What made the difference?" "A small part of human DNA seems to resist the Voidborn's touch," Dr. Wright explained. "If we could strengthen this part, maybe humans could fight the Voidborn directly." The Norvelian scientists were amazed. "Our people have no such resistance," one said. "The Voidborn's touch kills us instantly." Dr. Wright looked thoughtful. "Maybe that's another reason they're interested in Earth. Not just our sun, but our biology too." They developed a treatment that could temporarily boost the protective part of human DNA. It wasn't perfect, but it would give a person a few minutes of resistance against the Voidborn's deadly touch. The first volunteers for testing were Lisa and Jack. "It feels strange," Lisa said after receiving the treatment. "Like my skin is buzzing." "But it doesn't hurt?" asked Dr. Wright. "No, it's just different." As they prepared for the coming battle, more Norvelian ships arrived in Earth's orbit, but they brought bad news. The main Voidborn fleet had destroyed another Norvelian colony and was heading toward Earth. Ambassador Zixtal called a meeting with Earth's leaders. The large room was filled with humans and Norvelians. The mood was serious. "The Voidborn will arrive in 3 days," Zixtal announced. "Their fleet is larger than we feared. Even with our combined forces, victory is unlikely." The room was silent until General Blackwood stood up. "Humanity has faced unlikely before, Ambassador. We're still here." Zixtal's crystal body showed swirling colors that Lisa recognized as surprise. "Your confidence is illogical, but admirable." "It's not confidence," said Captain Powell. "It's determination. We protect our home." For the first time, a Norvelian nodded in agreement with humans. "Then we will protect it together." The day the Voidborn arrived, the sky turned dark. It wasn't clouds. It was hundreds of shadow ships blocking the sun. They looked like holes cut out of space itself. Earth's combined human and Norvelian forces were ready. Captain Powell commanded the U.S. Horizon, now fitted with new weapons that could shoot concentrated sunlight. Jack and Lisa were on board too, along with several Norvelian officers. "All ships report ready, Captain," said Jack from his station. "Begin defensive pattern," ordered Powell. "Remember your training." The battle began in space. Human and Norvelian ships moved in the unpredictable patterns Jack had taught them. The Voidborn seemed confused by this strange approach. They were used to the orderly Norvelian formations. The new light weapons worked. When they hit a void-borne ship, parts of it burned away like fog in sunshine. But there were so many enemy ships. Some broke through and headed toward Earth. Cities around the world reported attacks. The void-borne shadows moved through buildings, touching people and draining their life energy. But Earth's ground forces fought back with the new weapons. In Chicago, Lieutenant Jack Miller led a mixed team of human and Norvelian soldiers. They had been dropped into the city to protect its power stations. Jack's team included Kelvin and 2 other Norvelians who had once laughed at human fighting skills. "They're coming from the east," Jack shouted as dark shapes flowed down the street. Spread out, random pattern. The team fired their light weapons, driving back the shadows, but more kept coming. Soon they were surrounded, cut off from other units. "We're trapped," said one of the Norvelians, his crystal body dark with fear. Jack looked around. They were in a part of the city with many tall buildings and electrical systems. An idea came to him. "Not trapped," he said. "We have an opportunity." He pointed to the power lines and electrical boxes. "This whole area is full of energy we can use." Jack quickly explained his plan. The Norvelians looked doubtful, but Kelvin said, "We should try." Jack's unusual ideas have worked before. They worked fast, breaking into electrical panels and rewiring them. Jack had the Norvelians use their advanced technology to connect all the power sources in the area. Meanwhile, he modified their light weapons to connect to this makeshift system. "When I give the signal, everyone turn on your weapons but don't fire," Jack instructed. "The power from the city grid will feed into them." The void-borne shadows grew closer, seeping through walls and streets. "Now," Jack shouted. Everyone activated their weapons. The city's power flowed into them, making them glow brighter than ever before. Jack hit the final switch, and all the stored energy released at once. A massive explosion of light erupted from their position, expanding outward in all directions. The void-borne shadows screeched, a sound like tearing metal. As the light touched them, they burned away, leaving nothing behind. Miles above, on the U.S. horizon, Lisa Carpenter was working with the communications team. They had noticed patterns in the way the void-borne communicated. "It's not just random noise," Lisa explained to Captain Powell. "There's a structure to it. And look," she pointed to her screen. This pattern appeared right before a group of them changed direction. Powell leaned closer. "Can we use this?" "Maybe," Lisa said, "if we could send out a false command." She worked with the Norvelian communication experts to create a message using the void-borne's own signals. When they broadcasted, many enemy ships turned away from Earth and started attacking each other. For the first time, the void-borne seemed confused and disorganized. On the ground, Jack's team saw the shadows retreating. The same thing was happening around the world. Human creativity was turning the tide of battle. Ambassador Zixtal, who had insisted on fighting alongside General Blackwood, watched as humans used household items as mirrors to redirect sunlight against the shadows. Others had broken open road flares to create temporary barriers the void-borne wouldn't cross. "I was wrong about humans," Zixtal admitted to the general. "Your chaos is your strength." The battle for Earth lasted 3 more days. It wasn't won with one big victory, but with thousands of small ones. In every city, town, and village, humans fought with whatever they had. They used mirrors to direct sunlight at the shadows. They turned car headlights into weapons. They even used disco balls to scatter light in all directions. The Norvelians were amazed. They had fought the void-borne for years with strict battle plans and perfect formations. They had always lost. But humans fought differently. They adapted, improvised, and never gave up. On the 4th day, the remaining void-borne ships gathered high above Earth. Their main ship was huge, like a black hole floating in space. "They're regrouping," Captain Powell said on the bridge of the U.S. horizon. "This is our chance to end this." The horizon led a fleet of human and Norvelian ships toward the enemy. Jack stood at his station, watching the dark mass grow larger on the screen. "All weapons ready," he reported. "Fire when in range," ordered Powell. The ships fired their light weapons at the main Voidborn vessel. Parts of it burned away, but it was too big to destroy completely. "It's not enough," said Jack. "We need something more." Lisa, who was also on the bridge, had been studying the Voidborn communications. "I have an idea," she said. "Their ships are all connected to the main one. They share information, like a hive mind." "Can we use that?" asked Powell. Lisa nodded. "If we broadcast the right frequency, we might be able to disrupt their connection. It could confuse them long enough for us to hit their weak spots." Powell gave the order. Lisa worked with the Norvelian communication specialists to create the signal. When they were ready, they sent it out. The effect was immediate. The Voidborn ships began to move erratically, bumping into each other. Some fired their weapons in random directions. "Now," shouted Powell, "all ships target the main vessel." The combined fleet fired everything they had. The huge shadow ship began to break apart. With a silent explosion of darkness, it collapsed in on itself. The remaining smaller ships fled, disappearing into the depths of space. Cheers erupted across the fleet and on Earth below. They had won. The Voidborn were gone. A week later, people gathered at the White House for a special ceremony. Human and Norvelian leaders stood together on a stage. Jack, Lisa, Olivia, and many others who had fought bravely were there to receive medals. Ambassador Zixtel stepped forward to speak. His crystal body glowed with bright, warm colors no one had seen before. "When we came to Earth," he began, "we believed humans were primitive beings who might serve as useful soldiers in our war." He paused. "We were wrong." The ambassador looked at the humans before him. "You taught us that what we saw as weaknesses, your unpredictability, your emotions, your chaotic thinking, were actually strengths. You showed us new ways to fight, new ways to think." Zixtel turned to the world leaders. "The Norvelian people formally request permission to establish permanent settlements on Earth, and we ask to join Earth's military forces, not as leaders, but as students." The crowd murmured in surprise. General Blackwood stepped forward to shake the ambassador's crystalline hand. "Permission granted," he said. 1 month later, a new ship prepared for launch from Earth's orbit. The U.S. Unity was the first vessel built with both human and Norvelian technology. Its captain was Jack Miller, recently promoted. His second in command was Kelvin. As they prepared to depart on their first mission, Kelvin approached Jack on the bridge. "There is something I don't understand," said the Norvelian. "Even when victory seemed impossible, humans continued to fight. Why?" Jack smiled. "It's called hope, Kelvin. The belief that things can get better, even when the odds are against you." Kelvin's crystal body showed colors of confusion. "This hope, it is not logical." "No," agreed Jack, "but it's powerful. It's what makes humans keep trying new things, keep fighting when we should give up." Kelvin was quiet for a moment. "Will you teach me about hope, Captain?" Jack looked out at the stars. "That's why we're here. To learn from each other." As the U.S. Unity moved away from Earth, it carried the best of both species, Norvelian technology and human creativity, alien knowledge and human hope. Together, they would explore the universe, ready for whatever they might find next.